the record show all selectmen are present. Consent agenda warrant number 24, 3/11/19, payroll number 11, 3/14/19, and number 12, 3/21/19.
Move to accept. Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the warrant and payroll as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, under the consent agenda, we have a liquor license for Curtain Up Enterprises, doing business as Lakewood Inn, Restaurant and Theater.
Right, yeah, you'll actually
Two separate
be signing two, one for the in the restaurant, one for the theater.
Move to approve both. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve liquor license for Curtain Up Enterprises, the inn and the restaurant. Any questions?
Restaurant and theater.
In the theater, I'm sorry. In the theater, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Do those now or quickly?
Nope, we'll do a quick claim before we get down to number one.
Okay, letter D. Looking for a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of March 11th, 2019,
Move to accept.
and
Oh, by me.
the special town meeting on March 11th, 2019.
So move. Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the minutes for the meeting on March 11th, 2019, and the special town meeting on March 11th, 2019. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
There is a signature page for the special town meeting.
All right, we have old business. Mr. Moody?
I don't know if it comes out of old business, but I'd just like to make a statement that I got to say that the way the town manager handled the special town meeting was very professional, and it could have, the way it was going, it could have escalated, but he kept it pretty well de-escalated. And because of his professionalism, the meeting went very well. But I thought that he needed to have some recognition as far as, I don't know if I could have kept my composure.
Here, here.
Well, I mean, just so you know, the town manager and I spoke, and
Right.
I probably handled it the wrong way, and he kind of took me off guard by saying, I'll take over, because that's not the way we run not the special town meeting, but the public hearing. And so that won't happen again. But thank you on behalf of the town manager.
Thank you.
Mr. Elias?
Oh, no, not,
Old? No, nothing.
not for me.
Okay. Mr. Savage, Mr. Duchamp? All set. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
I had an opportunity to meet with Bonnie Levesque, Superintendent of Schools, earlier today. They're in the process of finalizing their school budget. The school board members have seen the first draft of it, and she gave me an indication of some of the adjustments that might be made. The bottom line is, last year it was 10.14 million, and it appears that it's going to come in somewhere in that same ballpark. It doesn't seem to be there's going to be a large increase in the school budget, if not maybe even a small decrease to that number. You combine that with the fact that they're getting more money from the state this year, a few $100,000 more. It looks like it could be a decrease to the taxpayer as far as the school budget goes. On Monday night, this coming Monday, April 1st, they're having a budget meeting, and all the select board members are welcome to attend that meeting at 6 o'clock up at the junior high on Monday, the 1st of April. That way you get more of the specific details of what they're looking at for this year's budget. In my meeting with Bonnie today, we talked about things like fund balances, and kind of looking at this year's budget with an eye towards next year's budget, because there are some things in the governor's budget that would impact schools in the coming year. So I plan on attending that meeting, and I would like to know, you can get back to me later, but if you know right now, if at least 3 of you plan to attend, I'll post it as a select board meeting as well, just so that will be covered in that regard. But I didn't know if you knew right now whether you wanted to attend that. 6 o'clock Monday night, the 1st.
Yeah.
I understand that there's been some new renovations at the junior high gym.
Mm-hmm.
Does that come out of last year's budget or the upcoming
Well,
budget?
Most of that's out of insurance,
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
so most of that's up. The only thing I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is just the bleachers.
Yeah,
The bleachers going in, and I believe that's proposed for next year's budget, I believe.
And those are the kind of details I think we can get some specifics on
yeah, okay.
at this meeting, actually.
And they're just, in case you want to be updated, they're just starting to install the floor this morning.
I understand they had to do the painting and stuff like that.
Yep, and they've also covered the ceiling. The ceiling, the flakes of paint come down on the floor various times, and it can be in people's hair if you're in the right place at the right time.
Okay,
So they've covered that all over with some sort of vinyl type of thing. And that's almost done, not quite done. I think they want to get that done before they start doing anything as far as putting a finish on the floor.
but, I mean, to me, I think it's the best gym that the town has. It's the oldest, but it seems to be one of the best.
Right.
You know, as far as seating and areas,
Well,
stuff
I mean-
of that nature.
Seating's not gonna be what
Seating
it
will be
was.
different now.
It's not gonna be what it was. There's no way you're gonna get to that. Because now you need aisles, and you need handicapped accessible areas. So anywhere in the front, I believe, there's gonna be a section there for wheelchairs, and there'll be aisles going up into the seats. So it's not gonna be what it was before. I mean, it's not gonna be anything close to that. But it'll still be nice when they get done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's like anybody else. I mean, Skowhegan High School just replaced their bleachers in their high school gym. And they don't have the seating capacity that they had before. They will be power though. I mean, they'll be, press the button, pull them in, push them in, pull them out, just like it is at the elementary school,
Yeah.
which saves a lot of backs.
Yeah, yeah.
Information like this is what we would find next Monday on April 1st. Do I know who might be interested in attending that?
I'll find it.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Moody, Mr. Bouchon?
I'll get back to you.
Well, I mean, the only thing is that if 3 people are gonna go, and I'm not sure I'm going, but if 3 people are gonna go, we have to put a meeting.
I need to
that's all.
post it by tomorrow.
We gotta post a meeting out, so.
So,
If you're not
That isn't really true, because that's not our meeting.
yes, but it is a
3 of us show up.
public case where there be more than 3,
So we're gonna not
selectmen
go to a
there
Christmas party or anything
discuss-
like that together.
But you're discussing town business.
Yeah.
Even though it is the school, you're still discussing town business.
We're discussing school business.
Why don't we just post it, and if 3 of us don't,
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
there doesn't be 3 of us, if there aren't 3 of us show up, then we can just say we canceled the meeting.
There you go.
We didn't have a quorum.
Right.
I think that would save, then if anybody can make it, then if 4 of us end up showing up, because we have time, we're covered.
Sounds good. That's 6 o'clock up at the junior high in the superintendent's office. That's where that meeting will be next Monday night. I participated in the county budget process last week. Very straightforward, very simple. For the second year in a row, the county budget only went up by less than 1%. So it was a 0.7% increase, a 0.9% increase last year. Because of the changes in our evaluation that continually catch up, our portion of the county budget should be about $30,000 less this year than it was last year. And I don't know if you saw the news in the paper that the Somerset County Commissioners have agreed to take finances from Waldo County to allow for 35 beds at the jail. That's a big deal, because it is something that this jail was built for when it was originally intended to be a receiving jail with folks from other counties. So, okay. Any questions on the county budget?
Yeah, it's gonna be unstable, it looks like it's gonna be unstable next year from what I'm listening to as far as funding, the state funding for our county jails, they don't wanna provide any funding. For some reason, I don't know why. There's been that argument going on since, when the state took it over, away from the counties, and then the counties got it back, and I don't know if the state is just, want it back again or something, but I would be apprehensive of not seeing it go up next year, because the legislators say they're not gonna touch it. They're not gonna put any money out there. I don't know where it's gonna come from.
Other than that, the county budget seems to be moving ahead. They'll approve it probably in the next week or so. And so we'll have some of the pieces for the overall portions of the tax bill in place. The Woodland Senior Living Project is before the planning board tomorrow night. That will be the final approval. Your approval of the minutes and your signatures on the assessed value of the property are parts of the pieces that now go to our lawyers at Bernstein Ashore, and they prepare the TIF package that goes to the State Department of Economic Development. So we're moving forward in that process. I have received a couple inquiries from local businesses in regards to loans and grants from our TIF program. And although I don't plan on getting into a large conversation tonight, I would recommend that we put that on an upcoming agenda item to kind of see what are the board's priorities with TIF spending over the next couple of years. Because we have focused a lot of our TIF revenues on road repair and municipal spending since the loss evaluation from Madison paper, we still anticipate another 16 to 18 years out of this particular TIF with backyard farms. Maybe it's time now to talk about some priorities for spending of those dollars. So I recommend that to be an upcoming agenda item. I wanted to note that Shauna Albert and Lisa Cowan, Lisa LaChance, have given their notice that they will no longer be leading the Madison Anson Days preparations. So last year was their last year. And so that leaves a major gap, especially as that point person. For the time being, I will serve as that point person, but I'm hoping that someone else will step up into that position.
I thought we won't have, that we run that door down, when this goes out on TV.
Sure. The phones
Well, I-
off the hook.
You should have been looking at the camera.
Yeah.
I'll help Mr. O'Mara.
I just,
Oh, I see one up back.
and Steve does help, and we appreciate that. I think one of the reasons that Sean and Lisa felt they could step away is because several large elements of the weekend have already have their champion or their person. It's just nice to have that one point person that can kind of direct everything and take all the calls. I will be on vacation from April the 28th through May the 7th. And currently there's a select board meeting scheduled for May the 6th. We may want to talk about this a little bit later in April, of what our selectmen's meeting schedule should look like in May. Because the reason that we moved those selectmen meetings up is you've got Memorial Day as the fourth Monday in the month. So we've kind of got to figure out how much of a gap do we want to have between the last select board meeting and town meeting, which will be on June 10th. What do you want to do before or after Memorial Day? So I just want to make you aware that my daughter graduates down in Georgia on Saturday the 4th, so we'll be traveling back after that. One more thing, thanks to the road commissioner and members of his crew, we had some plumbing issues in this building last week. We've removed one more flush. We're down to 3 flushes in this entire building. One on that floor, and then one down in the food cupboard. So we had a leaky toilet in channel 11 that could not be repaired. So we removed that. In the process, we found we were getting sewer backed up in the basement. And so that's why we were concerned that it may not smell too fresh in the building. But according to my nose, it smells better. It smells like coffee. So that helps. We had Foss's septic come down from Solon. They ran their equipment through the sewer pipe that goes the corridor of this building, then out towards Old Point, and they pulled back in a big ball of roots. So there's a tree near the sewer pipe out there, the roots are small, but they've gotten in there, that slowed down the flow and it froze, and that's what caused the backup. So they've cleared the backup at this point, but it's just one of the other things that we keep in mind when it comes to building maintenance on a property this age. Right, that's all.
Okay, new business, number 1, discuss tax acquired properties.
Okay, in your packet, you should have the 3 remaining properties that have not been taken out of foreclosure yet. If you go back a month ago, we had 9 properties that fell into foreclosure on February 19th. 6 of those have been taken care of. The board signed 4 quitclaim deeds at the last select board meeting, and there's 2 more to sign tonight. I'll get to those in a second. I do want to talk about these 3 properties on this list before you. 144 Whittier Farm Road and 57 Maple Street, both of them assure me that they'll be taken care of before the next selectmen meeting. They intend to have the funds in place first week in April, and then they'll come in and pay the balance on them, so those will come out of foreclosure. The property at 19 Mill Street is something that the town will probably own for a while, and it will be up to the selectmen's discretion in the future to see how they want to proceed. New rules from insurance now: if the town owns a property more than 60 days, it needs to have insurance on it. I talked with the gentleman that lives in this property, and he does not have insurance on his home. So we will add this property to our insurance for liability.
Let's do Sean.
Will we charge the owner of the building for that additional premium?
That is up to this board to decide. I really haven't have we figured out the additional costs at this point?
That, we would insure it, but it's only going to be for, general liability, it's not for any loss of the building. So that is a different quote. So I have a quote for general liability, but I don't have a quote for the building, and for that, they have to come out and do an inspection.
Right.
And if it doesn't pass inspection, then you work into that too, so think about that.
So this individual, even though there are 2 units in this house, he lives alone. He has another space that he has rented out in the past, but it's currently not rented. He has told me his intention is to pay $200 a month going forward. That will get him out of foreclosure by the end of the calendar year, by December of this year. And so it'll be just a few more weeks before he would then fall into foreclosure again for the unpaid 17 taxes. So it's, I will probably recommend that we see how this goes for the next 3 months. If I don't see any payments, if I don't see any activity, he is amiable. I do talk with him regularly, and he kind of lets me know what's going on. But this may be something within 90 days or so, unless the board wants information sooner, that we come back and reassess and see what the board wants to do.
Have we met all the regulations of this type of?
Yes,
this type of
he doesn't
takeover?
qualify for anything that the state changed in this process last year.
And this has been going on for a while, this isn't.
He was in foreclosure for the 2015 taxes, he paid his way out of that. He fell in foreclosure for the 16 taxes shortly thereafter in February, and so he's working to try to.
And nothing's been paid on this 1915?
No.
Nothing?
And that concerns me because he told me over the phone 2 weeks ago that he had mailed in a payment, and we haven't seen it. And he doesn't live that far away, so.
What do you have a question?
Yeah, I still have a concern about this insurance, that, I mean, he, basically he's getting free insurance, the town's paying for it.
Well, it's town's, it's town's property.
Yeah, but he's living on it.
Yeah, and you can change that if you, as a board, decide.
Well, like you say, you wanna give a little bit of a grace period
Right.
here,
Right.
but would you please make a note that we'll bring this back up and address this?
How soon do you want to address it?
Well, you mentioned, what, 3 months,
90
did you?
days, yeah.
90 days? I don't have a problem with that, but I think we need to look into this. If not, we'd be setting a precedence.
Yeah,
That's what I'm afraid of.
I think you should report back to us next month if he hasn't paid anything. If he hasn't paid anything, then at that point, I think we just pull the plug and say, you know, you told us you were gonna do something, you
Yeah.
didn't do it, and so now we have to take the steps that we have to take, because I too am concerned about the insurance fee,
Yes.
so.
Okay.
So in my tenure here, and just to remind folks that the town meeting warrant clearly states that the selectmen have the authority to dispose of town tax-acquired property in the way that they determine to be the best case for the taxpayer. So there's not a set in stone process that we do every time. And we had a property that was in foreclosure for 2 years past the date, but we know that that person was trying to get a mortgage and eventually did, and paid off all of their back taxes. So in that case, it worked in the town's favor. We have had properties where we did not move to evict the person, but sold the property. And the owner, or the new owner, knew that they were going to inherit a property with a tenant that they would have to deal with. So there've been several different ways several different options that the board has.
Maybe next month we talk about those
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a better course than waiting 3 months.
Okay.
And the other two you feel reasonably assured that, well, from our letter we got here, and
Mhm.
feel reasonably assured that they're coming through.
We'll definitely know something before the next selectmen meeting on those two.
Yep.
My hope is I'll bring you a couple of quick claim deeds for that.
Speaking of that, let's
Speaking-
get into that.
speaking of-
Very good.
We call that a segue.
Segue,
Yeah. Yeah.
Coordinate that.
Yeah, so the first is a quick claim deed for Randy Nelson at 15 Honeywell Road.
Looking for a motion.
Move to approve the quick claim deed for Randy Nelson at Honeywell Road,
15 Honeywell Road.
15 Honeywell Road.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second, to approve a quick claim deed for Randy A. Nelson for 15 Honeywell Road. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. And
The second one is for Jeannie Hatchie at 1676 Lakewood Road.
looking for a motion for quick claim deed for Jeannie Hashi at 1676 Lakewood Road.
Move to grant, assign.
Second.
A motion and a second to award a quick claim deed to Jeannie Hashi, 1676 Lakewood Road. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Yes, Mr. Wood.
Tim, I'm glad to see that this Whittier Farm Road there, that this, we did table it from last meeting. We tabled to see what was gonna transpire
Right.
to this meeting. Well, I'm glad to see that this person went and did communicate something with us in letter form here, and if I'm wrong, you correct me, it seems that things are going in the right direction for her.
Yes, and this was a ministry that's based out of Winslow that
Right.
has property up here that they don't necessarily use for the ministry, but they don't want to lose it. So if I'm reading the email correctly, I believe that she's going to receive enough funding to pay off the 16, 17, and 18 taxes, to pay all of that. That'd be
And
fantastic.
it also kind of leans towards that there's gonna be some upgrading after this is done.
Right, and that's good.
So,
They seem to be pretty enthusiastic with the picture.
Yeah.
yeah,
Person flying through the air.
I thought that was George at first.
Yeah, I did too, yeah.
It's an angel, isn't it?
It's an
Can't be
angel.
me.
Yeah, I don't see no wings there either.
So, if you look at that long wing, right?
So that's all I have on the
We'll go
first part.
to discuss mowing bids.
Okay, so we posted for an open invitation to bid on mowing for town properties, the forest hills and town cemeteries. As you know, I sent out the packet on Thursday night. We did get 2 more bids in on Friday by the deadline, so those are included in that new handout that I just passed you.
A new handout?
No, he doesn't have it. Oh, excuse me.
Literature.
Yeah, the new protocol?
He sure will.
So
I never did.
I just wanted to clarify to the board that we did talk to a couple of other local vendors who chose not to put in a bid. Dan McKinney communicated to me that he looked at it, was aware of it, did not choose to bid. Jerry Lynch from Lynch Landscaping said the same thing. He was aware of it, but chose not to put in a bid. So the bids that we received are from Robert Bishop for the 10 small cemeteries. York Lawn Care put in a bid for the Forest Hills property and the town properties. Boynton's Landscaping put in a bid for just the town properties. Nickerson Landscaping put in a bid for all 3, and G&G Property Maintenance put in a bid for all 3. So, just so everyone's on the same page, this mowing contract would not go into effect until the spring of 2020, so a year from now. So the contract that our current mowers have covers this spring up to the new budget, and then it covers the mowing in June, July, August, September, October. One of the things that we didn't want to do is to change horses in the middle of a summer. And so that June 30th, you'd have one mower, and July 1st, you may have another. So they'll continue that contract. So this will be a 3-year contract starting in the spring of 2020.
And they're all aware of that.
Yes, that was clear.
This should be 8,500, right? It's 25,500.
Very good. There's an asterisk there, you see.
I wondered what that meant.
That asterisk means that he did not keep the same bid for every year.
Oh,
It goes from 8 to 85 to 9. That's why the 3-year contract.
all right.
I knew you'd catch it.
All right.
So if the board is interested in making a motion on accepting these tonight, that's fine. If you'd like to wait and gather more information, that's fine as well. If you want my recommendation, we do have all 3 of our current contractors bidding. And if you're satisfied with their work, you have the opportunity.
Are these the 3, excuse me?
I was gonna ask that. Who's doing what for us right
If you
now?
look at the top of the sheet in the gray box,
The top of the sheet? Oh, yes.
in the gray box, that tells you who has the current contract and how much that current contract is. I thought you'd catch that.
I didn't even notice that up there. So, one is not contingent on the other, in other words, we
No.
don't have to give.
No.
We bid these 3 separately. Some of the contractors choose to bid on all 3, but they don't. You can award them all separately.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we keep the same contractors doing the same job, which would be Boynton's, right? On town property, or Boynton's Landscaping for the town property, York for the Forest Cemetery, and Bishop for the other cemetery.
After the updated price.
I'll
At
second
the,
that.
at this price right
Yeah,
here.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion to award the contract for 2020 to 2022 for the lawn care, Boynton's for town-owned property at $8,000 per year. York's lawn care for Forest Hill Cemetery at $18,000.
No, let's do the 54,750.
54,750, I guess.
For 3 years.
So in Boynton's would be 24,000 for 3 years. And then for Bob Bishop at 33,600 for the 3 years.
That's my motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Number 3, discuss date for annual town meeting.
This is a formality, but we do need to have a motion to set town meeting. The second Monday in June is June 10th.
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to set June 10th, Monday, June 10th, 2019 as town meeting day. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock at the Elias Auditorium. Any questions? Seeing comments, Elias Auditorium? Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Number 4, this budget review, fiscal year 2020,
Okay.
proposed.
I think you have all this information in your packets, and I made extra copies for people over there on the table. But if you need anything in great detail, I have the detailed budgets on the computer that we can put up there on the screen. So if you have a question about a particular line item, give it a few minutes, we can pull that up and find that. What I wanted to touch on, just a couple of things. The non-capital budget, what you're seeing tonight are my recommendations. We've had a chance to get the input from the department heads. I've gone back and made a few adjustments to those particular, small adjustments to those. In some cases, we went up. For example, in the highway budget, we did make some adjustments because we've run over our diesel line this year. We ran close to our diesel line last year, so we put an increase in the diesel line. So if you factor in all those non-capital budgets, we're up about 2%, which is kind of where you want it to be because that factors in your personnel. The largest one item increase is the stormwater assessment fee. Because we had budgeted $44,000 in that category last year, and our assessment fee is $107, so that's about a $60,000 increase. So when you combine that into all the other small increases, the non-capital budget is up about 4.5%, about $120,000. One of the conversations that we are going to have tonight is about the capital budget, which the board has not seen or has not discussed yet. And we'll get into that in a few minutes. I want to cover two things to see and kind of get the board's opinion on these things. Last year, the board voted at the budget advisory meeting to cap or close the articles. We had this discussion last year, well, what an open article is, what a closed article is. It would be my recommendation if the board wanted to do that. If the majority of the board wants to cap or close the articles, I would like to do that tonight. And just say, we're going to assemble closed articles for the town meeting warrant. Then as you have your budget meeting, which is next Wednesday night, by the way, next Wednesday, April 3rd, is the budget advisory meeting at 5:30 here, and we'll try to cover the entire thing in one night with the advisory committee. Once you're in that meeting with the advisory committee, if there is a discrepancy or difference between the direction of the selectmen and the direction of the advisory committee, then the selectmen can make a motion to open that particular article. And if you get to a point where the two committees want to offer competing numbers. Now, I don't know, I don't see anything like that in this particular budget, but one of the things I felt really bad about last year is by not having that option, it kind of ties the hands of the budget committee, and they don't really feel like they could put in input. But by saying that our standard is gonna be closed articles, unless there's a discrepancy with the advisory board, it gives them the freedom to put forth something if they feel strongly about it. Does that make sense?
Are you okay with that?
So can I ask a question? So when we close an article, you're tying the hands of the people at the town meeting?
You are, because what you're saying is a closed article town meeting warrant that's given to the public prior to town meeting. The purpose of that is to ensure the taxpayer that if they look at that warrant, they know that that article is not gonna go any higher at town meeting. That's the purpose of having a closed warrant article.
But isn't it those people that spend the money?
They approve the money that you and the advisory board recommend.
Right. So, say for example, they wanna give more to the food company,
Right.
that's enough.
Yeah, and that happened a few years ago,
Yes, it did.
when the town had open articles.
But they decided to give more.
Yeah.
Not us. They decided that at town meeting.
they decided to allocate more,
That's right.
and this runs into the same situation with boards like the school board and the select board. The public, at that public meeting, can allocate more, but it's really the selectmen to determine where it goes.
Well, if the public tells me to put it in the food cupboard, I don't think I'm
Understood.
gonna put it somewhere else.
Politically, right, that's the
You kidding?
wise decision.
This isn't Washington.
For the safety of ensuring that the budget that the select board approves and the budget the advisory board approves is not drastically altered at town meeting, most towns, like Fairfield, Skowhegan, use Norwood, use capped articles. It's been their common practice, and I'm afraid that we thought our articles were capped for years, but they were not the way they were
I
worded.
think that's one of the reasons why we went from what we were doing to this.
It's,
Last year or the year before.
it's kind of a double-edged sword here. I'm real uncomfortable about telling the people at town meeting that what you see is it. You have no voice in it right now. You can't change it.
Well, I will say, Mr. Moody, they have a voice every time you meet.
Oh, I know that.
They have a voice every time they see something on television.
I know that. But I just gotta say, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but I understand where you're coming from, I understand the reasoning between the closed and, wow.
You know, I mean, outside of the increase, well, double the food pantry budget, I don't think I've ever seen it gone up, and I do agree with you, there is a double-edged sword here, I mean, you're telling people who are gonna pay for it that they can't spend more than
What they're
what
looking
they're
at.
looking at, it is, but I don't think it doesn't happen very often
I know.
that goes up.
And that's where
Right,
that's where I'm open.
right. It could be quite entertaining if that ever gets that way, but still,
You're right. You and I have been to a lot of town meetings together in the past. And the only thing that's ever gone up, the only where it's been any issue at all is the food cupboard.
right.
So if there's not a problem, why make it? You're assuming the taxpayer's gonna go berserk. They're not. They're not gonna go berserk.
I just recommend it as a protective measure.
Yeah.
But that's.
From what? From themselves?
From a potential rallying of people
Yes.
prior to a meeting that may want to do something in particular with the budget.
The only,
Okay.
the
The problem is the way town meeting has gone historically in the past few years. If you get 50 people to come and support your position, you could eliminate the highway department. You want that?
Are you asking me that, Jack, after eliminating the police department?
Well,
Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm asking that as a rhetorical question to illustrate one of the reasons why we made that change, because there were concerns because we were in, I mean, obviously we were in budget crisis with, with the mill closing and so forth and so on. And we were just concerned that basic town services were gonna be eliminated at town meeting, things that we knew we needed to do. And that's really why we closed it, because we felt that was could be a problem.
What stops the taxpayer or the town of Madison going to the town meeting, closed, open, or otherwise, from saying, we don't want the road department anymore?
Well,
If they say no to that article, then what?
right. One of the things that capping the article does is it prohibits from a majority of increasing an article. It doesn't prohibit it from going down.
That's right.
It can be lowered and it can be eliminated,
Okay,
regardless whether it's open or closed.
so, making that statement, where have we had a problem in the past? Just show me one time. And I'm talking about a problem, I'm talking about increasing the food cupboard from 550 to 11,000, which is what happened.
Right.
They doubled. Other than that, we've had absolutely no problem at town meeting.
Haven't seen it.
No, you haven't. We're addressing an invisible problem. Anyway, if we want to vote on that, can we do that after we meet with the advisory board?
You can.
Because then they're open to do whatever they want, agree or disagree.
So what I'm getting is the consensus of the board is to have an open discussion about the budget with the advisory board, not talking about whether the articles are open and closed. And if the board wants to discuss, really, the advisory board can't cap an article, only the selectmen can. So if the selectmen want to cap articles, they can do it after.
Smoothie.
Tim, one other thing, you said that, and I knew it was coming, that the stormwater increase is about half of the amount of the increase.
Right.
And I understand that was coming. My question is this going to be annual, or are we gonna get these increases every year?
107,000? No, this is annual.
So from now on, we're gonna look at 107, is that what you're telling me?
You're gonna look at 107 unless we go up
37
2%.
for a year.
Okay,
It's not gonna double next year, if that's what you're talking about.
that's what I'm talking
No,
about.
no.
All right.
My understanding of what the sanitary district did was they used a certain percentage of their operating budget and assigned that percentage to the stormwater fee and assessed part to Anson and part to Madison. So I assume if their operating budget goes up, then it's very likely the stormwater assessment fee could also go up.
That's not gonna double, that's drastic.
All right. The other thing I just wanted to get the board's direction on, it just happened coincidentally to be a topic of discussion on the town manager listserv on the email today. An article that would authorize a contingency fund or an overdraft fund. If you remember at the last special town meeting, the voters had to authorize the overage of $19,000 for waste management. And perhaps Mr. Elias knows some history on this.
No, I can tell you some history, ask him.
Right. Is there any appetite for a warrant on the town meeting, or an article on the town meeting warrant that authorizes a contingency fund of, let's say for example, $20,000, because that's what we were over, to go before the voters?
Back then, in the old days, Hazel, wasn't it? Every department had a contingency fund.
That's what we saw in the computer, we didn't know what
Every
that was.
department had 5,000, 6,000, 10,000. Each department had their own contingency fund.
And there was no paper trail.
And I'm not proposing that.
No, he fought against that and he got it out.
I would propose that if the select board wanted it and the town meeting voters approved, if you did have an overage, and one of the reasons I say it might be worth considering is we are running much tighter budgets now than we have in the past. We are going to spend 99.5% of what we budgeted last year and probably do the same in this year. There's gonna be some categories that are gonna run over. Now, general assistance and highway are covered by state statute, but all the other articles, if we go over, we either have to hold a special town meeting or carry that forward to the next town meeting for them to approve it. If you had a contingency fund that said you can spend up to X, then the select board could take care of that at this level.
So that's,
Okay, if we had a contingency fund, we put X money in there, 25,000.
Yeah.
So if we used 5,000 of that, we just put 5 in the next year, just keep it at 25? Not 25 each year.
What you would do is you wouldn't be raising this 20 or 25,000 from taxation. Your article could say something to the effect that, do the people allow you to take it out of undesignated fund balance? To see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to use up to X from undesignated revenue in the event of an overdraft, unforeseen event, or emergency.
So we're not raising taxes and putting it in a savings account.
Exactly, you're just using a general fund. The voters are giving you the authority to spend up to X from general fund. And that would also be captured in our financials, so the auditors would be able to capture that and spell that out.
And we could
You
use
just
that.
gave me a nice warm fuzzy feeling.
And we could use the landfill as an example, if
Exactly.
they ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I don't have a problem with
But again, aren't you creating a problem you don't have? You know, we've always gone back to the taxpayer and said, this happened, and this is the reason it happened. The landfill went up, we had more going into the landfill. We overspent by this much, we have to replace it.
Can I make a statement to that?
Yes, Mr.
If
Lance.
we spend money that's not been approved, unless it's an emergency, they could say, no, you pay for it. You, and you, and you, and me, and him, and that will pass. So I feel, like Ronnie said, a little more fuzzy, warm and fuzzy with that contingency there that they've allowed us to spend. Because like you said, we're running a tight budget.
Mr. Elias has read the financial policy ordinance, because it is very clearly in that if the voters did reject that at the next meeting, the fallback is the bylaw.
Right, just because we spent it, and we had to, doesn't mean they're gonna approve that. Too bad, you better figure your budget out, boy.
Right. So I don't need a vote on this tonight, but I'm getting a consensus, if I did draft an article, then when the board has the opportunity to approve all the articles for town meeting, they could review this one, something like that. then.
Can review it.
Okay. Okay. I would like to go through this sheet here, which is basically the budget broken down by article. Some of this information
Yellow, but we don't.
you've already seen, some printed out in mail, some saved there.
We talk about general government first?
General government, Article 5, right up in the top left-hand corner. So again, this is a comparison of these large segments of the budget. If you want line by line, or a question about line by line, we can go there. So you see, under general government, you have administration, what the current budget is, what we've spent through March 11th, and the proposed budget, which for general administration is a $20,000 increase. Planning board stays basically flat. Code enforcement changes a little bit, although I will say the items that we're spending are gonna change within that 26,000. Boards and committees is flat. Assessing services is down 5,500, primarily because we've gone back and forth with our auditors as to how to display when we pay an abatement. Traditionally, we've always paid abatements out of overlay money. For a while, the auditors had us put it in the budget, but we're all in agreement that we can go back to just paying it out of overlay. And the bottom line there, elections has a $4,000 increase. A lot of that has to do with the amount of money it takes to maintain the automatic voting equipment that the
And a
state,
$1,000 increase.
the state was
You
so
said
red.
4,000.
It was a $4,000 budget, $1,000 increase, thank you. So, Article 5 for the total general government, the current budget's 575, 295, it's going up 2.77% to 591, 250. I just want, I'll go through this as quickly or as slowly as the board wants.
You're doing well.
Any questions on general government? Okay. Article 6 is public safety, and you'll notice we've moved some categories around. We discussed this after last year's budget. So public safety is ambulance, which is flat, because I have not heard of any increase. I know that some of you are on the ambulance board, and there was not an increase to the budget.
All of us up.
Okay. Oh, okay. The police budget, we're going to leave flat, and I'll talk about that. Talk a couple things about the police budget. We will receive another rebate this year from the county, because we budgeted for 4 deputies. Our 4th deputy this year is in the National Guard, and he has spent a year in Afghanistan. So while we have to maintain his job, we do not have to continue paying him at his regular rate. So we have saved that by maintaining that position and saving those salary savings. We will get a rebate probably in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $65,000 at the end of the fiscal year. That'll be coming back from the county. We're still funding 4 deputies, and that deputy that's coming back from Afghanistan has chosen not to stay with the Madison division. He's got a father-in-law to be that has given him some land in Bangor, so he's going to work for Bangor PD. As he does that, we recoup from Bangor PD our training expenses for that one, and then the sheriff will post that 4th position.
How long has he been with Somerset?
He's been out of the academy he's been with Somerset for 2 years, out of the academy for a year.
Then there's a buyback.
That's what I was just saying, Bangor will be paying,
Oh, okay,
they'll be paying the training fees.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
Talking with the sheriff, and we've been involved in several community meetings, what the sheriff proposes to do is to post this fourth deputy position as a detective slash school resource officer. So someone that would be involved in some of the research and detective work in the Madison area, and also be directly involved with all three of the school systems in Madison. So the sheriff will be posting that position as we get into the new budget year, so.
Has he given any ideas on how he's gonna exercise this officer in the school?
Oh, yes, they have existing school resource officers now. Mike Pike is one that is involved in several schools, and Mike's also a detective for the DA's office. So, we're not looking for that officer exactly, but it'll be modeled after that.
All right.
So, that in mind, what the sheriff has built for a budget is around $480,000. What I'm suggesting we raise from taxation is $440,000. Traditionally, it's taken the sheriff a while to fill all four positions, and you never know if we're going to have one coming or going as far as a deputy. We're gonna take that $60,000 in rebate that we're going to get at the end of the year, and we're going to hold that to see if we need to cover any of those costs, rather than raising the full $485,000 out of taxation, when we know most likely we're gonna get some of that back. It's been my goal over the last couple of years to kind of keep that rebate or refund gap down as low as possible. We still have funds set aside from a previous rebate for a cruiser, and the sheriff will be looking to replace a cruiser in July of 2019. And the last time was in July of 17. So,
So when we have these, we're gonna be running 3 deputies now?
we'll be running 4 deputies. One will be a school resource officer detective, and the other 3 will be patrol deputies.
So this resource officer detective won't do any patrol?
They'll cover shifts as needed, but their primary duties would be school resource and detective.
Will those 3 people be enough?
Yeah, well, that's basically what we run with for almost 2 years now, is just 3 deputies. And the sheriff has always wanted to have a detective as that 4th deputy. But the sheriff is always clear to say, he works for the board, whatever the board decides they want, how they want to model that police department.
I think this is a good way to utilize that 4th deputy. I think there's a need for it, based on some of the discussions that we've had with the school folks and
Right.
so forth. I think it's a creative use of that. I think it's probably a whole lot more effective to have somebody doing that than it is driving around 84 miles of road or sitting down on 201 chasing speeders.
Well, until that point where I'm the one calling. And that's gonna be a little problem, but that's, I mean, I think it is good to have a school resource officer, and I do think it's good to have a detective, but if that person's not available on patrol, and I think they are, I mean, I kinda have a problem with that a little bit. So,
Is there any money from the state for the school to have a resource officer? Oh, so we couldn't charge the school and get money from the state?
We've talked about that, and there's not a program in place
No,
right now. Sometimes they'll do it out of a COP Fast type grant,
Oh.
but we haven't entertained that.
Mooney?
The sheriff has guaranteed us the coverage that we have asked for.
Right.
And I'm sure that it's gonna continue that way, even with this resource officer or what have you, because, I mean, the first thing he's gonna do with that person is if you've got an officer, let's say is on vacation, that person's gonna fill that slot. That's gonna be the primary direction that officer is gonna go in. And when that person is not doing that, then he's gonna exercise to get into the detective and school end of it. And I think it's a very creative way of addressing a number of problems. I don't think you're gonna get any calls of lack of coverage, and I think that's what you might be thinking of. And I think in this way, this the detective, the person that's gonna be doing some of the detective work is gonna be able to exercise proper time and not let things get cold, and probably clear up more cases. At the same time, if there is a contact person for the school to go to, you don't have to just call the sheriff's office and say, I need a deputy. I mean, you have a contact person that's gonna be designated. No, I think the exercising of what he's doing is something that's long time needed.
I gotta weigh in on this one.
I was hoping so.
Well, my understanding, and again, I'm trying to use my memory, which ain't that good, is Mr. Moody says the coverage is there. My understanding is 24-hour coverage, which we haven't had since we changed over. So that's really not quite right. I thought the other benefit for the sheriff's department was that the town was gonna have all their detective, their whole division available to the town as a resource, and that's how we're saving money. They have how many detectives, and it sounds like now we're creating our own. And one of the reasons we were actually combining with them was a cost-saving measure, if I remember correctly. So it sounds like we're kind of going backwards almost.
Well, let me address a couple of those things. One, we made a change a couple of town meetings ago. The original contract that we did with the sheriff's office that started in 2015, July 1st, did provide 24-hour coverage and had 5 deputies. After 2 years of not being able to fill those 5 deputies, we went to town meeting with a approach to do 4 deputies and do 24-hour coverage that would be covered by call-outs. So there'd be a time during the day that there isn't a Madison Division deputy on between 2 AM and 6 AM, and that would be covered during a call-out. So that's how we continue to achieve that 24-hour coverage, and I know that's semantics, but that's how it was presented at town meeting, and that's how town meeting voters approved it at that year. So we've been operating under that for 2 years now, the 4 deputies providing on-call type coverage. It's been the sheriff's intention ever since we moved from that 5 to 4 model to have a more senior deputy in Madison serving as a detective, because that was one of the concerns, is that Madison's just getting all the new people, the new hires that haven't even gone through the academy yet. And so to try to combat that, the sheriff wanted to have a more senior person in that 4th deputy position, that being the detective.
So, with the model that you are, or the sheriff or you are presenting right now, we're still having that same service with the gap from 2 to 6. That won't change.
Right.
And the new person will be at the school and at leading investigations in this area. So, I mean, if that's not gonna change, I mean, I don't see how it's not gonna change, but I guess I need to see it better than that, but I still think it's gonna, and I do think a school resource officer is good, but I need to see how that's not going to change.
Somebody said that the sheriff's department already has a school resource officer. Is that not available to Madison because we pay this extra $450,000?
No, Kara Beck and Mike Pike's school resource officer is funded by a county cops fast grant that started a couple of years ago. And he has already been assigned to all the schools that he can, so there's no room for him to do more hours in Madison as a school resource officer. If they wanted to include Madison, Skowhegan has a school resource officer right out of their Skowhegan Police Department. So if they wanted to do some of those other schools in Somerset County, they would have to assign another resource officer.
But if they did that, the whole county would be picking up the cost instead of just the town of Madison.
That would, I think I understand that would be the case.
July.
Yes. Is it possible for us to have the sheriff here?
Yeah.
When we meet with the advisory board?
Yeah.
I feel there's a lot of questions that he can probably answer.
I think you're right.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the police?
One more.
Yeah.
The $40,000 increase, it's the same people, but why a $40,000 increase on what the sheriff wants? I mean, you said we're budgeting 440 and we're getting money back every year, and he wants to go to 480 for the same amount of people.
He was at 469, and we budgeted 440 from taxation, knowing that we had rebates. So we're doing the same thing this year as we did last year. So his budget for, the current budget that we're in right now is for 469,000. We had money left over from the previous year, so we only taxed 440.
You've done it every year.
His budget has moved up a little bit this year, primarily because the FOP and the sheriff's department, the county have settled they have a new contract, and that contract is a significant increase. One of the things that happened, not to take too much time, but when the former Governor Page authorized a pay increase for the state police, that left all the county deputies and municipalities in a little bit of lurch, because that was now a big gap, they were losing everybody. So the county worked out a new contract so that I believe a starting deputy now is $20 an hour. And some of you know exactly what pay was like when you started. So the other thing is now they all have the option of getting into main PERS, which is a substantial retirement for county employees. It's also a very expensive retirement program for the county to pay into. So those costs across the board affected all the deputies within the county, including the Madison ones.
I think it is worthwhile to point out that, what are we, in the fourth year of this?
If July 1st, 2019 would be 5 years.
Okay, so as of July 1st, we're starting our fifth year,
Right.
fifth contract. And the fifth contract, the sheriff's budget amount is exactly the same as what the first year contract was. Just so you know.
With one less employee.
$481,000 it was, and it's 485 is what he's budgeting, so
Yeah.
I think he's done a pretty good job of managing that.
I mean, obviously coverage has changed. It's not like it was when Madison had their own police department. But his oversight has allowed us to budget much more consistently.
And the other thing is, we know exactly when the calls are.
Right,
I mean, all you gotta do is just read the sheriff's office report.
yeah.
You know, when you go 3 months and you have 2 calls between
That's-
1 and 6 in the morning on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Right.
2 calls in 3 months, I mean, it makes sense.
Donnie's itching for you to get to the fire budget.
No. We just get warmed up on you.
So the fire budget current year is $103,000. It's about 50% spent. As you're probably most aware, the major spending comes in 2 of the payroll distributions. One's done early in the year, the other one's done in May. But I believe Don has done a good job budgeting and covering his budget this year, so that he should have some surplus left over that we should be able to rotate back into a carry forward for next year. One of the things that affected him negatively last year, not to his fault, is that the increase in the hydrants cost was in that same article of public safety, and it affected him negatively by not allowing him to carry forward some of his own savings. So hopefully by the restructuring of the articles, that will help that. The proposed budget's $108,000, about a 4.7% increase. Animal control is $10,900, about a $500 or 4.6% increase. So that your public safety apples to apples comparison is up less than 1% year over year. Does anyone have any questions on fire or animal control?
Well,
Did they go up, animal control?
Did they go up?
Does animal control, is this a person?
This is a person we have contracted that covers animal control for.
So we're covering the new minimum wage, is that just it?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
We contracted with a person that covers Rome, Smithfield, Norwalk, and Madison. So Article 7 it has a new title. It used to be Other Government, and now we've changed it to Public Utilities, because we cover storm drains, streetlights, hydrants, and waste disposal. This is where you see your stormwater assessment fee, Streetlights, we've overspent streetlights just about every year, and I think I finally got a handle on it, hopefully, by budgeting at 60,000. Hydrants is the same, and waste disposal, I'm increasing because, again, we're tracking to be, I don't know, unless it slows down, we're tracking to be over in waste disposal again this year, just like we were the previous year. Any questions on that? Public Works, the highway and summer winter roads, you see the overall budget there of 598. It's about a 1.78% increase to 609. That includes continuing to have the third seasonal worker. Obviously, having that third seasonal worker paid dividends this year. So we continue to have that in the budget. Recreation goes from 73.9 to 75.6. Part of that increase is covering the minimum wage costs for students as they participate. Article 10, cemeteries. There's an increase in cemeteries because we're not going to get the return on our perpetual care interest this year like we did last year. Last year, we had $12,500 come in from our investments. The investments did not do as well this year. Kathy called, as of right now, it's about $7,500. So we're anticipating about $8,000 from interest to come in. So we had to raise our budget to offset that. The new mowing contracts factor in a little bit, but since most of the mowing is going to be done under this current budget, that'll really be in effect at the end of this budget.
Michelle?
Can we look at what those are invested in?
You certainly can.
I don't know too awful many people that just haven't made a whole lot of money this year in investments.
Well, I'm one of them. I didn't do too well. So, the last year, there was a sale of dividends right before that capital, which inflated our figure. So, gaining $8,000 in interest on is probably about 5 to 6% as a return.
I didn't realize it was that dividend.
It was, and we didn't realize it either until Steve and Courtney explained it to us.
Right.
Article 11 is community services, so we're breaking out the general assistance budget, the community programs and service organizations. I wanted to make two changes in community programs. One, I've eliminated the tree warden line from community services. For years, that tree warden responsibility has been given to the road commissioner, so we've included that in their line under the TIF budget. It's about $2,000 or $3,000 that we've budgeted for tree removal. We talked about this at a previous meeting, I believe. The other thing I want to do is to put an article in the town meeting, I've seen this in other towns, where instead of setting a line item that says we're gonna give the snowmobile club $1,900, we just create an article that says the town voters approve passing through the excise fees to the snowmobile club. Because that's essentially what we do. And every year, depending on registrations being up and down and whatnot, it's about $1,800 or $1,900. So that way the snowmobile club can check at the end of the winter and know exactly what they're gonna get in that pass-through. So that way we take it out of community programs. So with that being done, it's about a 5% difference, 5% decrease in that overall article. Article 12 is the library, 113.9 is the current budget, going up to 116. Again, we talked about that does impact primarily minimum wage because some of our substitute librarians are paid minimum wage or close to it. Article 13 is town-owned property, which includes this building, the parks, town signs, the boat landing, and the ice rink. The biggest increase there is at the Main Street Park because those electricity costs are not static. In other words, they change depending on use of that property. So I thought we would at least include the electricity in that line. It had been in the street lights line, which really didn't make sense. So we moved it from one to the other. So that brings your non-capital budget. Your current budget's $2.648 million up to $2.768 million, a 4.5% increase, or $120,000 difference from year over year. Any questions, concerns, radical changes that the board may want to make?
Yeah, I think after we discussed last year, and I don't know if Tammy takes the credit for this, to reorganize the budget in this format, so it was easier understood, and some things were where we didn't know where they were, or they were mixed in with other things. I think this simplifies it a lot better, and it's easy to get a handle on it.
You've put the credit in the right place, Mr. Moody, so.
So when it,
Pat on the back.
in the highway, Jeff, in the highway, now, we have stuff for painting roads and doing everything we need to do to get things, so everybody likes it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We have roads that are gonna be, I mean, the stripe down the middle, painted again this
Any
year.
new roads that will be paved, that paint money is in that protected cost.
No, I'm talking about doing like Ward Hill over again, or,
Well, we don't normally do those every year.
Okay.
When we were doing them, before we cut out of the budget years ago, we were doing those every 2 years.
okay.
So we just did those last fall, so we'll do those in the summer of 2020.
Alright, because when you drive Ward Hill in the fog, like it was a couple weeks ago, and you go from Madison to Norwich Walk, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So, and it was quite foggy a couple of weeks ago there, I don't know, Friday night or what it was, but it's a big difference, and we need to keep up on that.
Yeah, well, what we'll have to do next year is we'll have to put that money in the budget in a special project line or something of that nature.
So I think that's necessary to keep that up.
So if there's no further questions
I
on,
have just one,
Yes, sir.
Town Manager. Are we gonna, is this what we're gonna give to the advisory board, or are we gonna have a breakdown? You know, like the salt line,
right, so when I send out packets to the advisory board meeting, which I'm hoping to do after tonight, it will have the summary like that, and it will also have the 10-page
the
line
breakdown?
by line,
Okay,
yeah,
perfect,
which also has what we spent in FY 17-18.
okay, thank you.
So we're gonna do that budget meeting where Selectmen will vote on it, and the advisory board will vote on it.
Right,
Yep.
that's next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, but Wednesday the 3rd. So I'd like to turn now to this page in your handout up here that talks about the capital. And I believe that's why Donnie and Jeff are here to answer any questions that you may have. So this is a breakdown on the proposed capital, which comes into paving. You can see some projects there on Preble Avenue, Colby Bryant Road, Walker Road, and Schuster Road. Now you'll note that none of those have anything to do with water or sewer, so we won't have to try to coordinate anything with the other districts. Then the other items are set aside for equipment purchases for highway and fire. But I will open it up to see if there's any questions for Jeff about the paving projects.
I would like to ask a question of Jeff. I traveled, I don't know, South Solon Meeting Hills Road or that
Yep.
road, Saturday. I was not impressed by, I thought it was a dirt road, our end of it. I mean, I don't know about this chip seal stuff.
Okay?
I think that if we're going to chip seal something, we need to say it. And right at town meeting, we need to tell people that's what's gonna be on your road, if that's what we go with. I think that, I prefer the hot top and go from there. It might know it costs more, but I think people, that's what people are expecting. So,
The chip seal, that was one of the drawbacks. It does look like a dirt road, you know, and that was quite a few of the complaints when Solon put it down on the 7 miles of the South Solon Road.
right.
But once they got it down and everybody understood how it worked, you know, they were all set with it. And it does give you that perception, because we had those little rocks being broken off by the plow, and the dirty rocks on the sides of the, especially in the white snow, it shows up a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing from the people at Solon that they're complaining about even walking their pets on it, because there's some sharp pieces in there, and So I don't think the residents of those roads in Solon are as happy as we're making them out to be, because I don't think they are at all. So I prefer hot top, and I think that, you know, hopefully we can go in that direction, but, Mr. Moody?
What's the life expectancy of this chip seal?
8 to 10 years. And what the chip seal is, it's a maintenance, it's like a crack seal, it seals the whole road up. And obviously, if you got a big crack, it's not gonna do that, because they're still gonna come back. But what it is, it's a maintenance perspective of taking care of your road. You get a longer life out of your road, and such as, let's say, for example, if you was to do the Ward Hill Road, well, that road was just recently paved in the last 5 years. You crack seal the bigger cracks with our crack filling machine, and then they come in and lay, you know, the chip seal over the top, and that would bond the whole road and coat the whole road as one.
So it gives, when you bond this on top of pavement, then you're saying this is your 8 to 10 year life expectancy when that happens?
Yes, on top of what you've already done.
What you've already done?
So let's say the Ward Hill, I believe the Ward Hill Road was done 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you do this not this year but next year, you've already got another year, so that gives you 6. That will give you 8 to 10, so that will give you anywhere from 14 to 16 years out of that road.
Okay, the next question is, and I'm sure it's gonna be quite a difference, what's the difference per ton between the chip seal and the hot mix?
The hot mix is this year, we haven't got a price, but these bid prices here, these budget prices are on $85 a ton. Usually, it will run between $75 and $80 a ton for your hot mix. Your chip seal goes by the square foot. It's usually right around $2.30 to $2.50 a square foot.
So it's a lot cheaper.
It's a lot cheaper, but it's, all it is a preventive maintenance.
Okay. So basically, for those people that don't understand this chip seal goes on pavement, it doesn't go on anything but.
Goes on pavement.
To preserve that pavement.
Yes.
That pavement to defer the cost of the hot mix
Yes. And extend the life of your road.
and extend the life of it. Okay, I understand it now.
Okay, Mr. Elias?
If we did that and didn't like it, is this something you can hot top over?
Yep.
So this chip seal, it's not as susceptible to cracks as hot top?
What it is, it's a layer of emulsion that goes down like a liquid asphalt, about an eighth of an inch thick. And then what they do is they come behind with a truck and they put the stone, half-inch stone on top of it, and then it gets rolled in to the emulsion, and then it sticks to the emulsion. It takes a day for it to set up with vehicles traveling over, and you're still gonna have your loose rock, because not every rock is gonna stick to it, because you have a rock on top of a rock. And that's what you're seeing beside the road. Yes, there are some sharp edges, because it's a crushed product, and it's difficult to plow the first couple of storms, because you have to knock those tops of those edges, those rocks off. It does shed the water a lot better. Some of the towns that we've gone to look at down south, the roads have dried out a lot faster. You know, it has some disadvantages and some advantages.
I mean, that's like we did back in the 50s. We put
Yeah,
tar
pretty
down,
much,
put sand in it.
Yeah, same idea. That's like you do it on a gravel road or whatever.
Yeah. Let it get all over your vehicle.
We used to ride our bikes in it.
So,
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
So, Jeff, if you opted not to do this chip seal on Preble Avenue, from that section from the VFW to Schuster Road, it would basically, if you didn't do that chip seal, it would remain looking like it does now.
It will, and that was the whole intention of doing that mile of the cold mix. And the reason to do the whole length of that road from the VF to the Schuster Road is so you have one complete riding surface. I mean, obviously, that's up to the choice of myself or you guys, if you just wanted to cover that cold mix with the chip seal and then continue on with the hot mix on top rest of the road from where we left off to the Schuster Road. We're not gonna use any more cold mix this year. That road is too rough, it's too out of shape to use the cold mix, so we're gonna coat that with 1.5 to 2 inches of hot mix. From where we left off with the cold mix to the Schuster Road, which is about a mile.
So if you didn't spend $55,000 on the chip seal, would you recommend a top surface coat of hot mix?
Well, I'd have to talk to Allstate, who puts that down, that was not really discussed. His recommendation was to complete the ride surface with the chip seal. I'll be speaking with him in the coming weeks, once we decide what we're going to pay and what we're gonna spend, and then we'll have a more firm price on the per ton mix of asphalt.
Any other questions on the paving projects? Nope. So the last $100,000 of capital there is highway equipment set aside, and I want to be clear, I don't have any designated equipment to purchase. From my conversations with Don and Jeff, this is something that they feel should become a regular part of capital to replace aging equipment. In years past, we've done truck bodies, we've done set-asides for trucks. There's been equipment like SCBA's that were approved by a grant, but those get older, and they're already 5 years old into their 15, 20-year life cycle. So that's really what I put these figures in for. And they do have some matching funds out of their TIF account that can be used for fire and highway equipment, not to exceed this 50,000 match, but up to.
Do we have anything on the docket that you want to replace now? Is this 50,000 will go towards?
Our tank is 1990, so that's gonna be 30 years old next year. It's always been in the past, the town replaces an apparatus every 30 years, tries to.
How much is the tanker?
330,000.
Yeah, maybe,
That's all.
Maybe
That's all.
100.
yeah.
We did get a quote on a tanker replacement because we did submit a grant to the Assistance to Firefighters program, but the vehicle program funds 1% of the applications nationwide. So we could be that 1%.
So if we're thinking about this tanker, is that what we're going to say here? I mean, we're just gonna have general fire equipment? I don't know if that's gonna fly.
And that's why I wanted to have this discussion, because I have that concern at town meeting, that unless it's specific for a type of equipment, the voters may not have the appetite to just be putting money
I mean,
away. And I
think
know that's your concern.
I think a tanker is certainly a thing to go for if we need to replace it.
Well, we're gonna have to review it.
And so, I mean, that's.
I also wanna put $5,000 a year away for SCBA's and the bottles. Right now, to replace a bottle in 2018, they're $900 a piece. We have 44 in the department. In 2029, all those bottles gotta be replaced, because the 15 years are up. And probably by 29, they're gonna be $1,500 a piece. We don't start putting $4,000 or $5,000 away now per year, when it comes time to replace all 44 bottles, that's gonna be quite a chunk of change.
Somebody's got a
If
problem.
we got an upgrader pack, that's gonna be at least $3,000 to $4,000 per pack.
Yeah.
On maintenance every year, we got a 10-year contract that we got with our grant, that's coming up in 2025, which is probably $1,000 a year for just the maintenance on that. So we ought to start tucking a little bit of money away.
Well, you're full of good news today.
Huh?
You're full of good news tonight.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would just hate to see through 2029 that we don't get a grant for this, and we have no money saved, and we gotta spend $150,000 to replace all this stuff. I think it's better to tuck a little money away now.
Could we see from our department heads a list of what we're desperate for? Priority list. Could you give us that?
We have that framework started in a capital improvement plan, that we have a spreadsheet for that, and Glenn and Jeff and I used to go over that and kind of move vehicles up on the priority list. So we have replaced that. We have something similar with Don and fire, but you're talking about a total of 6 fire trucks, or 4 engines, and then other accessory trucks.
Smokey.
And I have to agree with what George is saying, and the simple reason is if you've got a line, like you got highway and fire, and you get 50,000, people are gonna wonder what this is for. So if you've got a priority list that in the future, this is what it's gonna cost us in the future, and we're working to break that down so that this big sum of money doesn't come all at once, it's gonna be very receptive as far as that goes. And I think if we do it that way, and the people need to know where this money, these large sums of money, where they're directing to, that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I had put a list together of some of our stuff that needed to be done, such as a snow blower for the big bucket loader, and that's 18 years old. We've rebuilt that quite a few times. We've had some bearing trouble with it and some clutch problems and so on. We've put quite a bit of money into it. And, you know, there again, we only use it to pick up snow because it's the only thing that you can use it for. I got a budget price on that for $138,000. We also need, and possibly gonna be needing in the future, a trackless, another sidewalk machine to keep our sidewalks clear in the winter time, and for a budget price of $148,000. One of our smaller trucks that plows in town is in desperately need of a plow and a dustpan, you know, a front plow, at the total of $10,000. And we also looked at a few other smaller, you know, pieces of equipment around the garage. Our skid steer is mid-80s, and we're gonna need some parts for that we're just getting by with it, that the parts are more than what the machine is worth. And there again, it's just a machine that we use around the garage. We use it for spring cleanup for the 2 weeks. We do have a truck that we just did the whole front end on, and it cost $2,500. It's gonna need some suspension work in the rear end, and it's gonna need a clutch in it by the end of the summer. And those total costs are gonna be just a little under $10,000. Okay, the whole maintenance line budget for the equipment is $35,000. So that's almost a third of my equipment line budget.
I guess what I'm looking to see is a long-range projection, okay? Let's take the next 5 years. What you people expect, or I can't say expect, what you people are realizing and have us realize that in the next 5 years, this is what we're looking for. And because of what you're explaining. It's worn out, it's old, you know, it's not worth repairing, what have you. And that way, I think, you know, we'll have a good idea, and we have answers for the outside people to say, well, how come they got this, or how come they got that? Well, this is the reason why. If you wanted your tax dollars to go up and spend $500,000 in 1 year, instead of, you know, budgeting this capital line, which is a solid line here. But myself, I would like to see something in the next, let's go the next 5 years. You know, you're talking, we know that you've got a 30-year-old fire truck. You know, what can we do in the next 5 years? Not saying it's gonna take that long to turn that over, and the same thing with the road commissioner. You know, what's your number one priority in the next 5 years? What needs to come, 1, 2, 3, 4, what have you? And I would like to get a better handle on it that way. And then, you know, and the other thing is, you know, if we get questions, we got answers. I hate to be asked something, well, how come we're spending this money, and tell people, I'll get back to you. I don't like that, you know. So, you know, if possible, that's what I would like to see, Mr. Town Manager.
I think we can do that.
Any other questions for anything on the highway equipment or fire equipment?
So the only other thing I draw your attention to is this bottom square on that same page, the mill rate impact. And I don't do that to frighten anybody, but I wanna put the realities out there. So I think we can assume that our valuation is going to stabilize. It's gonna stay the same. We're not gonna have any huge losses or increases in our valuation. So that part of the tax rate is gonna be the same. We've already determined that the county budget and the school budget are not going to have any crazy increases. So really, the big difference that you're looking at here is the capital, because the capital spending is that $400,000 piece that we didn't factor into previous budgets. So it's going to be the thing that raises the mill rate. So in that square there on that sheet of paper, I gave you some different options. Currently, our mill rate's $21.50 a thousand. If we had the fully funded budget with all the capital, and the board did not use any money to offset taxes, the mill rate would go up just a little bit over $1 per thousand to $22.55. If the board used $200,000 to offset taxes, it would go up about 50 cents, just under 22. If they use $400,000 to offset taxes, the mill rate would stabilize, maybe come down a couple cents. So the big cloud that's still hanging over is we have not had a decision by the State Board of Property Tax Review on the Madison paper abatement. And the worst case scenario is if we did owe $1 million to Madison paper, we would use that $400,000 that we could be offsetting taxes. We would use $400,000 that we have taken from a line of credit, and we'd still have to pull together a couple of other dollars from different places to pay Madison paper. If we did that, then we'd have to pay back that line of credit over 5 years. So you would have to put in another $130,000 into the budget. And that would probably push your mill rate up another $1 to just under 23. So those are the, I think those are fairly accurate numbers as far as the realities of the mill rate.
Do you think it's possible to have a discussion with the school district to see if between the two entities we can maintain a 21.5 mill rate? I mean,
In order to do that, you would have to, you'd have to have an answer on the Madison paper thing.
Oh, I agree, I think that's, I mean, that, obviously, you gotta do that, you can't not, you have to have that answer first, but
Right.
I would like to see us do everything that we can to do that. And I've seen their year-end audit report and so forth and so on. And if it's $400,000 to keep it at 21.5, well, if we took 2 and they took 2, there you are. I mean, it would seem to make sense to me to keep that mill rate the same.
And that would certainly be my goal.
And I certainly, and I think that in years past, we've done a tremendous amount of kind of austerity moves on our side to try and make sure that the mill rate stayed stable, coupled with using money from surplus and so forth and so on. And we haven't really just, I mean, we've asked them, but we haven't, they get a big chunk coming in from the state, and, yeah, they put a little bit towards it, but then they have other costs that they're, so I just, if it's a couple $100,000, if we can share it, I think we should try to do that to keep the mill rate stable at 21.5.
And that's probably a good conversation for the
Yep.
meeting next Monday.
Yep.
Because I told Bonnie that we would have some conversation about fund balance and compare the two fund balances between the town and the school.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Elias?
Our budget this year, mill rate is 21.5,
Our current mill rate right now is
and
20.
last year it was what?
21.5, 2 years in a row.
You know, I hate to say it, but that's unrealistic to try to keep 3 years. We got all kinds of stuff that needs to be done in this town, and you're not gonna do it without tax increase. Case dismissed right there. You're putting off, and putting off, putting off. And sooner or later, you're gonna come in here, and this is what your budget's gonna look like. With a spike, because you're gonna have to replace stuff. Now, this you know, you're looking at worst case scenario, which is exactly how much for the mill, exactly? 800,000?
No, $1 million,
$1 million?
that we would have to pay
$1 million.
Madison paper.
So if we pass this budget like it is, with nothing out of surplus,
Right,
which would be the smart move, because we're not gonna know,
right.
would be a 22.55 mill rate.
Yeah.
Why is that unrealistic?
I'm just giving you the facts.
Does that put you $2 a thousand above everybody around you?
Jack, I don't live in Hanson, and I don't live in Skowhegan, and I don't give two hoots about that town, you know? The thing of it is, you keep going 0, 0, 0, and sooner or later, you're gonna be sitting here saying, where are we gonna get the money from?
It's a tough balance, because one of the things that keeping that mill rate competitive does is it allows business development and to expand our tax base and get our valuation up. Because it would be great if our valuation ticked up 5 or 10% every year. That way our mill rate wouldn't have to go up, because the valuation would cover some of these costs.
Look, we all know that mill rate's a fallacy. If we had the town reevaluated, you only need so much money to run your town. So if my house rate price goes up, the mill rate comes down, because I'm gonna pay more in taxes.
Because your tax bill is
So,
the same.
neighborhood towns, it doesn't matter. Anson doesn't have a mill in it, and Skowhegan's running on Saturn. If that mill shut down there, guess what, Skowhegan? So, you know what? To me, it's unrealistic to say the same year after year after year. I can't do that at my house. No one here can do that at their house. Everything goes up, everything. We're running out of diesel, we add more money for diesel. What do you think it's gonna be next year? Could be $4 a gallon. It's unrealistic to think we can go year after year with 21.5, so we can be competitive with everybody else around. To me, it's unrealistic. That's my view.
It's tough, I mean, I don't know how you're gonna keep going, I mean, we just heard, what, 400,000, and we just heard a truck, 500,000, I mean, we, you know, so I mean, I don't know how we're gonna keep going like that. And I mean, you can ask somebody to chip in with you 50-50, and, you know, the school chipping in 200, us chipping 200, and doing that, but I don't know, I mean, another year, it's going to be worse. I mean,
Can I ask your opinion, Mr. Teacher? Is that gonna happen at the school level?
that isn't my place. This isn't my place.
Would you guess that the school would give us $200,000?
We have two directors out there, you can ask them.
Is that realistic
That's
to
not
think
my
the school
place.
is gonna give us $200,000?
I don't know where that come from.
There you go.
Through Sean.
A number of years ago, when the mill was first, when the first evaluation of the mill happened, there was an agreement between this board and the school board that between the two entities, there would be a $2 million surplus maximum between the two entities. There is nearly $3 million there. So, and the problem that I have, George, you can think that we don't have the money, but when you have $3 million in surplus between the town and the school, I can't sit here and justify taking more money out of the taxpayer's pocket to put into a surplus account for entities, combined entities that have a $3 million surplus. I can't justify it, and I won't do it.
Still alive.
I'd like to make a statement to that, Mr. Duchamp. We sat here last year, and what did we set our overlay at?
About just under 300,000.
Right, $300,000 for an overlay. Where'd the money go?
With our general fund.
That's what I'm saying, okay? I'm saying if we go up 1 mil, we keep our surplus the same, we do not have anything to do with the school, that gives us money sitting there for the mill.
The problem is you have one taxpayer now. It's not the school. It is the Madison taxpayer.
Yeah.
And the Madison taxpayer has to pay for the school, Madison taxpayer has to pay for the town. When you were SAD, then you could have two separate and distinct entities that were taxing authority, if you will. When you have one taxpayer, the taxpayer of Madison, funding these two entities, it's incumbent on these two entities to work together to make sure that A, your budgets are met, and you have enough money to cover those contingencies and those emergency type things. I certainly think that $3 million is more than enough, and taking 200,000 from each of us is not a big deal.
But the rules for that entity have not changed. Correct? The rules for how the school brings their money up, gets their money, has not changed from, no matter if we have, they still present us with a bill through a meeting.
Through a budgetary
Through a
process.
budgetary process, they present the town selectmen or assessors or whichever one with a bill for that service.
And
That's
all
where-
I'm saying is,
that's where
can
that-
we ask them
Well, that's
to
where,
participate? We've been making sure that they got everything that they need for the last few years. And our guys have been, we haven't done much in terms of capital for the last few years. Well, now we have to. So, and they happen to have some extra money coming from the state. I mean, that's what we've been told. I mean, we watch the news reports. So now it's our time to maybe, we need to get a little bit of that. But the taxpayer doesn't need to be on the shoulders of the taxpayer when we have these surplus funds sitting there. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I think that's a thing for the school board meeting, and asking them that.
And that's why I brought it up, because if we're gonna go to talk to the school board, if we know that, we could use them to help keep the tax rate even, if they threw $200,000 into the pot, and we can throw $200,000 into the pot, keep the tax rate at 21.5, it only makes sense to ask for that. And if they say no, then fine, then you go to the taxpayer and you increase the tax rate. But everybody knows where it came from. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know why everybody would know where it comes from. I don't really
Comes
get
out of
that.
our pocket.
Well, I mean, yes, I do understand that. Yep, so
I just had a couple things. Would the board entertain any options such as bonding or borrowing money for capital?
How you gonna pay it back?
That would be your payment over 5 years. You would borrow X amount of dollars to meet your capital needs now, and then instead of having a $500,000 capital line every year, you would have a figure, assumably lower than that, as your repayment. Something many communities do, but I know it's.
Until you get an answer from the mail, I don't think it's a good idea.
Just throw that out there.
I'm not against equipment, I mean, we need it, but $1 million is a lot of money, and I believe the department heads get it also. I don't think they're putting that aside at all.
Woody?
I understand what you're saying, Tim, and that's why I'm asking for a 5-year priority, okay? What do you really need first, what do you really need second, on down the line?
Yeah.
And in that way, I mean, we've got projected 50 in there right now, and till we get that priority list and the cost factors out next to it, to see what the total is, we can't make any decisions, none whatsoever.
I emailed our attorney today, and he did reach out to the secretary for the state board, and she indicated that there may be a hearing sometime in April, but we were also told there may be a hearing sometime in February. So
Yeah.
I think as you progress through this process, especially with the advisory board meeting next week, I think you're going to have to make your decisions on the budget between the two boards contingent upon finding out before town meeting. And you can call the advisory board back sometime in May. Probably up till the end of May is the time where you'd have a chance to change your town meeting warrant. It'll be in the town report, but you can alter that 10 days before your town meeting. You can add or subtract your town meeting warrant. So if you were able to find something out in late April, early May about Madison paper, you could reconvene the advisory board and say, okay, we're in much better shape, let's do X, Y, and Z. Or you could say, it is the worst case scenario, and see if the advisory board and the select board want to make any changes. So I think that's your path going forward.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you, that was a very good discussion of the budget. I'm glad that we had everybody here to talk about it.
We'll see everybody next Wednesday. All right, number 5, ordinance review.
All right, the first page on that is this one, which is the draft of the fee schedule. And the only thing I want to draw your attention to is right in the middle where it says code enforcement. Because all the other fees on this page are current, and they're what other departments charge. The code enforcement fees for building permits is proposed to be changed. Currently, our building permit has been a static $20, and it's been that way for as long as most folks can remember. It's not competitive with other places around us, especially other towns that have the requirements of the MUBEC building code, which Madison does. So this has been workshopped through the planning board, and you see there, if you follow me, there's a residential building permit and a commercial building permit. So the minimums and maximums are in that shaded line. So the minimum fee would be $50, not to exceed $200. Down here in commercial, it would be a minimum of $100 commercial building fee, not to exceed $400. Now, these numbers in the middle would be the scale at which the fee would be developed. So if you're building a new house, it's 10 cents a square foot. If it's a 3,000 square foot house, then the most you're gonna pay is $200. If it's a 1,500 square foot house, you're gonna pay $150. If it's just a mobile home, there's gonna be a flat fee of $50. And the other items here, the barns and the other structures, they have these per square foot fees, but they're gonna fit within that minimum of 50 to maximum of 200. And so that's the same that applies to commercial. I do give Susan a lot of credit, our code enforcement officer. She did quite a bit of work with the planning board and did quite a bit of research on this. But this ultimately, once the planning board is doing some final work on it tomorrow night, this ultimately comes to the select board to set the fees. So I bring it to you as kind of the first draft right now to get your thoughts and comments and feelings about it.
But this does not go to town meeting.
No. What goes to town meeting are the ordinance changes that say, refer to the fee schedule.
Okay, what if, I don't see in here, what would, like if I went up to Campbell's and bought a building, what would that be under here?
Accessory structure, shed, deck, porch.
Okay, but it's already, something that's already built,
Right.
right?
It doesn't matter.
Square foot.
You need a building permit to
Okay.
put it
All
on
right.
your property. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Outside code enforcement?
Oh.
Dave, do you have any thoughts on this? Mr. Savage, do you have any thoughts on it?
You probably don't want them.
Oh, okay.
No, you probably don't. I think I sent maybe you an email on, I don't remember.
Yeah, you did.
I struggle with someone, building, 1,000 square foot home compared to someone that's building a 5,000 square foot home. I mean, 5,000 square feet, it's $500. I don't really understand the cap on it. If you
Yeah.
build that kind of house, you can afford $500 permit. It's not that big of a deal.
The cap, I will say, came out of the planning board discussions. The planning board wanted a minimum and a maximum for kind of, to maintain for lack of a better term, a business-friendly or a resident-friendly approach to it.
I don't disagree with that, but say someone maxes out their house at $200, and then, I'm gonna use backyard farms just for an example, because they've got 25 acres out there. Homes spending $200 to build their, building permit for their home, and they're spending $400 to cover 25 acres, it just,
Well, and that's the.
that's the part I struggle with.
That's the fee portion, but obviously, a commercial builder is going to spend exponential amounts
Absolutely.
on the project.
A lot of towns do it this way though.
And I think that's what Susan found.
Yeah.
When they looked at it. So you might just have a philosophical.
No, I guess so, I just don't think, like I said, if someone can afford a 4,000 square foot home,
Why cap it?
why happen? I mean, they can handle a $400 permit.
That's right.
Me too.
It's good life.
And weren't we just 5 minutes ago having a heated discussion on where we're gonna get money from? And you want a cap? I agree with David 100%. I mean, if I'm gonna build a 10,000 square foot home, I can afford $1,000. What is that?
Gonna figure it in the contractor,
Drop
anybody's
in the
gonna
bucket.
figure it in.
Okay, this is why we bring these things to the board.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm not opposed to a cap. I mean,
You're not.
I am opposed to a
To
cap.
okay, you're in favor of removing the cap.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking for money, guess what? Right? That $1,000 isn't gonna sway me one way or the other to build in Madison.
Utility would be.
Right.
Okay.
You taking the cap off?
Well, the
Go
plan,
back.
I'm gonna give that to
Go back to
Susan,
planning
because
board, yeah.
they're talking about this at the planning board
So they
tomorrow
have to
night.
agree to that?
I don't know.
I thought we said that.
You do say it, but the planning board has done all the legwork on this.
Okay, well, we just cut their legs
And I
out.
still.
It's cute.
Tony.
By taking the cap off, if somebody's gonna, any new structure, and they have a contractor, it's gonna be all figured into the contract price. They're not even gonna see that. They're not even gonna see the permit, because the contractor's gonna do the permit.
All right, any other feedback? Thank you for the feedback. The only, a couple of things I want to touch on while we're talking about ordinances. I put in your packets, chapter 142, 165, and 738. These are ordinance updates that we've talked about. And some of them have to do with the fees. For special amusement permits, there's a fee of $20, but again, I want to eliminate that language and put in, refer to the fee schedule. Building construction, this goes back and forth. A couple of years ago, we had after-the-fact permits that the fee for somebody building without a permit, that had to come in for a permit afterwards, the fee was double the fee,
So it's
which,
$20.
which went from $20 to $40. At town meeting, we brought up the idea to raise it to a certain percentage, that was voted down. Next year's town meeting, we brought up to raise it to a flat fee of $500. That did pass at town meeting. Susan has run into a couple of issues with that, where it would be a lot more flexible if we either A, went back to the fees are doubled, or B, eliminate the conversation from after the fact permits altogether out of the ordinance and just have it in the fee schedule. The fee schedule says double the fee if you have an after the fact ordinance. Since it's in ordinance, I recommend leaving the language for after the fact permits in the ordinance, but just going back to that the fee would be doubled. That way, if somebody is building a 10,000 square foot home and they start on it without a permit, then their $1,000 building fee is, permit fee is now $2,000 permit fee.
Which you have right up here anyway, correct?
Right.
I think now that we've addressed the.
Right, the
fee.
problem was the fee.
The problem was the fee, it wasn't the penalty.
Yeah.
Now that we've addressed the fee, the penalty follows
So we have to have
along.
we have to have a-
Well, here's my question to the board on this. A public hearing on ordinance changes is not required. In most cases, it's recommended. Do you want to schedule public hearings on these three changes, or do you want to simply just move them to town meeting? You could approve the changes tonight and just move these, you can move all of them or a couple of them to town meeting, or schedule a public hearing.
Really?
It'd be a heck of a lot more financially to just move it to the town meeting.
Well, the public hearing, we incorporate into our selectmen's meeting, we wouldn't spend too much time and money on that, but.
No, I'm all for, just myself, I'm all for taking it to town meeting. Let the people listen.
Making a motion.
I'll make that a motion.
Yeah, I'll second
We're
it.
gonna take chapter 142, 165, and 738 to town meeting? Nothing of that, you know?
That's right.
All right, so we have a motion, a second, to move chapter 120, 142, 165, and 738 to town meeting vote. Mr. Duchamp.
Has it been our past practice to have these, like, a public hearing at a selectmen's meeting?
I think what big changes we have.
And I'm gonna address that with the parking and the vehicles in just a minute. But, this board has already moved, like, taking all the fees out of the sewer ordinance. This board moved that to town meeting without a public
So
hearing.
this is really just administrative
Right.
more than.
Right,
really
we're not
actually
drafting a
changing
totally
the-
new
right.
ordinance, we're not making.
Not
that.
changing,
Okay. Okay.
you're not adding chickens and cows to it.
Yeah.
Mr. Elias.
We could take this to public hearing, but this is what you're gonna have.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that would be here are not gonna be at town meeting.
Nothing wrong with these.
No, but that's, you know, that's what I'm saying, but most of the taxpayers aren't gonna be here. Waste our time.
All right, so we have a motion to take chapter 142, 165, and 138 to town meeting. Any other questions? All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
Vehicles and traffic, which is chapter 399, I put this last page in your packet. I have the whole thing if you wanna go through it all 20 pages of it, but, at the last selectmen's meeting that we talked about this ordinance, we talked about the problem with the violations. If we're just going to tow, then it's not likely that we're gonna tow every vehicle, so the board kinda gave the direction of maybe working in a variety of fees and penalties that don't overburden the deputies, but at the same time, put some teeth into the parking ordinance. So the violations and penalties on the top of the page there, anybody that violates it may be subject to having their vehicle towed at their expense. B, local law enforcement will enforce the terms, conditions, and fines clearly marked on signage at or near the location where the parking is prohibited in part or entirely. And C, parking fines are set at the direction of the Madison Select Board. So what the road commissioner and I have talked about is, you have these coded in your ordinance as a way of enforcing no parking. If that passes at town meeting, then you would have to go through the work of replacing old signs with new signs. And whatever the fine the board set for parking in this area, $25, $50, whatever it is, the sheriff is in agreement that they can see the fine, or they can see the sign with the fine, see the violation, take care of it right there.
So we'll schedule this for public hearing.
This, I would recommend needs to be scheduled for a public hearing, because there's enough folks in our business community that probably wanna weigh in on these changes.
So we can just schedule that.
We can,
Yep.
unless there's any other questions. The only other thing I would bring up is something that the road commissioner and I worked on today, and I haven't brought it to you yet, I'm just telling you it's coming. Chapter 694 under roads and highways, you don't have it in your packets because we just talked about it today. It affects road postings and seasonal closings. After a review, there's about 5 or 6 roads that we need to add to that aren't in the ordinance. And the penalties have changed statewide, so we need to update our penalties. So that'll be coming into the other future meetings.
All right.
So that's it.
Any other questions on that? Selectmen's concerns, Mr. Moody?
I've vetted enough.
Mr. Elias?
Yeah, me too.
Mr. Savage? Mr. Duchamp?
I'm all set.
The only thing I'd say to the town manager is, we need to figure out, with you being gone, what our schedule is gonna be in May, because if we have to bring this back to, we gotta figure that, we probably should get that figured out, or what we should do. You
Yep.
can figure it out, email it to me, and I can
We can
check it out.
discuss it right at the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay, citizens' concerns. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Diane Pinker.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions about chapter 738, if I may. One of them is, with this change in this ordinance, does it mean that there is going to be no fee at all for the people using this?
Correct.
Okay, so no fee in these priorities.
Right, and I think in that ordinance, it states that the use of these facilities is primarily for nonprofit organizations that don't have any religious affiliation or anything like that.
I see that.
And it used to be the nonprofits would have to pay a fee in the ordinance. We have not enforced that for years. And if we have, it's been done sporadically and not consistently, so that's why we took it out.
Okay, so if somebody was starting a new church, they couldn't use this building even if they did pay the $10 fee?
That is correct. And that's
Okay.
always been the case, that
Okay.
that you couldn't have a church in this building.
All right, and so a business entity, say, the trending thing now is the essential oil. Say I had an essential oils business,
Right.
and I wanna have a public, have all my distributors here and have open to the public, I couldn't do that either.
No, and I have actually turned down people that have asked that because of that
That's
ordinance.
a for profit.
Okay,
Right.
okay, thank
Right.
you. That's all I want to know.
All right. Seeing no other questions, looking for motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carried, we are adjourned. 8:31.